If there's anything that you want to talk about, go ahead and throw it in the chat. I got a couple of things on my mind I want to discuss. First, let's talk about law enforcement. Um, the 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 disaster, which is the Goombas and the ice enforcement teams. These the, the, this is bad. Washington Post is now reporting that they opened fire at a traffic stop in the Keep DC Safe Again tsunami. And an ICE officer dumped a good part of a magazine at a unarmed black man, of course. Um, Shot up his jacket, the car dashboard, the car seat. There's photos of the car seat damage in the Washington Post story. Um, Here's the problem. Both the federal officers and the DC police failed to mention that, you know, a multitude of shots were fired at a traffic stop. I cannot tell you how much trouble we'd have been in, especially over in West Germany. Um, because one, this was a pretty hinky stop. Didn't sound like get out and start shooting kind of a stop. This wasn't a rape suspect that had been identified or a bank robbery that just occurred or armed stolen vehicle, a carjacking. None of that. None of that was apparent from the article I read. Um, so they get out of the car, they light the guy up. How they missed him, thankfully. As you can see on YouTube, a lot of the new generation can't shoot. Um, so they shot up this car. Reports are filed. Nobody mentions that bullets flew. I can tell you well before the general found out what happened. Um, let's say like the night we were looking for who was it? Bridget Einot, the terrorist who killed the guy at the bar for his ID. Um, and we're looking for her with a Pulitzer and a bunch of other people. um, Pulling over somebody that wasn't involved in the kidnapping and the murder of the service member in Germany, and then lighting up a vehicle, walking away and saying, nothing happened. Yeah, we did a traffic stop. And like leave out the fact that I emptied a magazine into the car. I tell you, a long time before the general finds out about this, I'm screwed. I am screwed blue. Okay. When the provost sergeant finds about this, I'm done. Okay. When the provost marshal finds out about this, I'm done. Okay. Simply because I made an omission. And I talked about this before, and it was I thought about it because that federal attorney and former FBI agent I follow both here on Substack and on Blue Sky, Asha, um, brought up about being in the FBI, and an omission is considered an outright lie for all intents and purposes. Okay. Same thing. Like most of our special agents in charge and most of our regional commanders are trained at the FBI Supervisory Academy and Army CID. So most of the people you're working for are FBI trained. Okay. And the rule in Army CID, the Criminal Investigation Division, was even more strict. If somebody of authority in your regional office asks you a question about an investigation, you have exactly one chance and one chance alone to get your information out of your mouth correctly. If somebody finds out that you omitted or you fabricated any part of your statement to a superior officer, whether it be the chief warrant officer, special agents, or it be our commission officers running the regional offices, if you were asked a question and you didn't answer it 100% truthfully to the best of your knowledge, you're done. So how the hell do you get away doing a traffic stop, letting off some fireworks, and then walking away saying, "Ollie, Ollie, oxen freak, nothing happened, all good," walking away? Okay. When I was in a civilian police department as a peace officer, I had to dispatch a deer, which is frequent. We lived in an urban forest, so deer get hit kind of a lot. So you have to dispatch animals every once in a while. And this deer was really wounded and it wasn't dying. And I'm like, permission to get on the radio, permission with the watch commander. I said, I need to discharge a round, um, put an animal out of its misery. And he goes, I'm 30 seconds out. Let me just stop by and I'll give you approval in person. I go, Roger, I'm standing right here. It's on Fremont Street. And he rolls by and he goes, oh yeah. And I just whipped out my pistol as fast as I could and then ended the animal's suffering. It's like, done, just don't screw around. I had to write a report in a memo and I got questioned by the lieutenant the next morning about the round. I shot one round into a wounded deer and I had to write a report and I had to answer questions about it. Because we were literally responsible for every bullet on our gun belt. Okay. You don't lose ammunition. You don't have accidental discharges. And just a quick side note on gun safety. I did this video and I wrote this essay, the gun fetish essay, a long time ago. If you have a habit of accidentally discharging firearms, you shouldn't be handling firearms. You're a damn idiot. I literally do not know how many rounds I fired off in the military, in the paramilitary, sports shooting, skeet shooting, with my wife and everything else, 600,000, 750,000 rounds. I have no idea. It's just a ton. We go through 10,000 rounds in an afternoon doing close quarter battle training with our M16s out at the range. So I literally don't have any idea. I've never had one single accidental discharge, not even close. Because this is my safety. Many people don't understand that. Okay. But yeah, you get into a traffic stop and you light the car up and then there's no shooting follow up. There's no thing because here's the thing. And this is true in military police or CID. This is true in the FBI, the U.S. Marshals. I had a lot of friends who worked at ATF and in U.S. Marshals back in the day. And they're like, oh, yeah, we get into it, fairly regularly because we go after the super bad, career criminals, stuff like that in the Marshal Service. And they go, yeah, we're responsible for every round we pop off. And you hit a civilian or hit the hostage in a hostage situation, that's your problem. Okay. So the way we thought of use of force, the way we thought about expending ammunition for whatever reason, how did we get to the point where you can make a traffic stop, light a car up, and then go, nah, I'm not going to say anything about it. Well, it's rhetorical. We're being run by a criminal organization. A street gang is now in charge of the federal government. So homie lit up a car, but don't talk about homie, because we don't want homie getting in trouble. Same shit from the crack war days. You get a call from the next department over, how we need a couple extra cars. We got one car rolling around with an AK-47. They're doing multiple drive-bys, um, we catch the usual suspect. He ditched the gun, he's running like hell. We tackle him. Nobody in the whole city knows this kid all of a sudden. Okay. So that's why it reminds me of just a street gang, because they're acting like a street gang through and through. And just like street gangs, you usually have a record before you join the gang. Okay. I was reading in another article how ICE agents are being put through training. The training is only like 6 weeks, which is unbelievably stupid. Okay. There's no way you can test their physical fitness, their knowledge of the law, their interpersonal communication, and their non-lethal force applications in 6 weeks. Okay. They're bullshitting you. They are bullshitting you. Okay. Just to go through the basic school for MPs is, when I went through it, 16, 18 weeks? Okay. And then any special thing you get on, you got to go through more training. We're letting these guys out in the street to grab anybody they want from any place in America after minimalist training. That's not cool. But that's not the worst problem. The worst problem is the journalists have now identified people with serious previous criminal convictions on their records, and they're at the training center or they're already working for ICE, up to and including drug trafficking, and robbery charges. I worked so hard when I was in the military, and well, I wasn't a choir boy. I'm no angel, okay, but I didn't do stupid stuff either because I knew my clearance was at risk if I ever got caught doing anything stupid. Um, and I was talking about this with somebody else recently. They were like, because they're a veteran in my neighborhood. They go, "Oh, you get a high security clearance?" I go, "Oh yeah, really super high." And they go, "Oh yeah, I was top secret for a while because I had this job when I was in Kuwait." And I go, "Oh, cool, yeah." So they trusted you with communiques and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah, you need that kind of clearance to get through that day to day operational stuff. And then I told him my clearance, and he goes, "Well," and he goes, "What the hell is PRP?" I'm going, "Yeah, a lot of the top secret people don't even know what it is." So I worked hard and I kept out of trouble and I kept my security clearance the whole time I was in. Okay. And my security clearance didn't come from the Army, it came from the Defense Intelligence Agency. Okay. I applied at a whole bunch of police departments all over the country, Vermont, some out here at West, but also in a couple in New England, Connecticut State Police, Vermont State Police, had an exemplary record. I don't think I was ever out of the top 10 wherever I applied. Three different times I applied, I was number one or number two on the list. Uh, Out of 1,700 people in Connecticut, I was number seven. And I didn't have a college degree. I just had 6 years in the military. And I was going up against guys who had master's degrees in criminal justice. So, you know, worked hard, kept my nose clean, did the job right. Now the job is being done by Goombas. You got to be kidding me. And yeah, the FBI has its faults, but most civilians don't understand what the FBI does outside of Hollywood and a couple of TV shows. It's why I don't like the show NCIS. It's not like I don't like the Navy or Navy police or anything. They usually do a good job. They've made mistakes just like we did in Army MP or Army CID. But what I don't like is the whole mythology of the NCIS television show. But how did we get to the point where we're electing somebody with a bad fraud record, a bad acronym record, a bad self discipline record, a bad record of bankruptcies, a bad record with women. We find out that we also, like many people believe, that he may have an inappropriate fascination with little girls. Okay, and then you wonder how we end up with the gangster federal agencies pretending to be cops. Are you kidding me? Just needed a vodka to get through a sip of vodka to get through that thought. It's so disturbing to me. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I never had a problem when bad cops got caught or stupid people who had badges got caught, and we had to kick them out because they were being stupid. Like CID agent. Okay, there weren't a lot of black men in CID. Hell, there wasn't a lot of black guys in the MPs. Okay, even though the Army has a greater than general populace portion of black people in the Army. So we had a really good junior agent. He was a staff sergeant, enlisted agent. Because you can be an enlisted guy, a warrant officer, or a commissioned officer, and still be an agent. So he was a staff sergeant. He was an up and comer. He was really smart. I did two cases with him. Real professional, really good IPC, real good interpersonal communications. Knew how to talk to people. Okay, he comes up hot on a cocaine piss test because he got drunk and tried cocaine over the weekend. I'm like, dude, I liked you, but see ya. Don't care. Okay. Yeah, I could just say screw it and, go out and bang hookers and do coke every weekend too, but I don't because that would be bad. I had a close friend. I think I talked about this before. I had a close friend got caught making up a racist charge against a guy that had nothing to do with anything. And then when that came out and I said, "Did you do it?" And he's going, "Yeah, it looks like it." I go, "Then we're done." This is a guy that, like, off duty, I would go out to dinner with his wife and my wife, and we go out and have a nice Friday night dinner or something on our days off when we had weekends off. So, I never had a problem with addressing corruption in the ranks, because if you don't do it, you're just another gang. And that's what my team chief here in the States, he was one of the original agents after Vietnam. And he would tell us, especially when we were going after some of the bigger boys out there, guys we knew that this is a top tier of criminal. Okay. He would tell us, hey, remember one thing. If you don't remember anything else, okay, we're not the gang. We're the good guys. Okay. So that has stuck in my head now for shit, almost 40 years. So if you're going to send people with strong armed robbery, cocaine possession, and attempt to distribute charges in their history, and you're going to send them out to go harass people they don't like by skin color, you're going to have a myriad of problems. And this Washington Post exclusive tonight is interesting, because the Post editorial is becoming wholly MAGA, wholly owned MAGA, uh, a billionaire apologist, um, MAGA adjacent op-ed now. Uh, but a couple of the new hard news desk stories are still killing it. And tonight, I think they got one. I think they got one in this shooting case, because if even the local police didn't mention it, that means we have a conspiracy to omit information. And again, if I did that in the army, in the military police, I would have been in serious trouble. I would have lost my job. I'd have lost my security clearance. I'd have probably finished my enlistment as a supply clerk. Okay. Not the supply sergeant. Supply sergeant's an actual job. You got to know logistics, how to inventory things, how to secure property, how to deal with missing property. There's a thing to being a supply sergeant. No, I get to be his lackey for 2 years after I screw up. Okay, so that's something obviously I didn't want. But one recommendation I'll make: you talk about how bad this street gang is. Go watch Legal Eagles. I think it's now in 3 or 4 parts, about everything about them going after the political enemies of dear leader porn star Humper. The trumped up bullshit against Letitia James. I'm completely neutral on James. I really don't know her. I understand she's a successful gal. She got elected as the AG. Good for her. Beyond that, I don't really know much. I live on the opposite side of the country. I don't really follow her. But looking at and listening to the lawyers on Legal Eagle talk about the case against her, it's embarrassingly empty. Okay. This is grievance. Oh, watch later. I'll post it later. All good. All good. Um, the the grievance is the only thing behind the charge. Trump legitimately committed civil fraud and was convicted of it in a New York court system. The only reason the charges kind of went into the ether and disappeared is because the Supreme Court and the federal court started using a FBI memo that really didn't mean anything. Oh, you can't charge a president while he's sitting in office. No one ever said that. You just made that up out of thin air. Then that became automatically the law. And then all of a sudden, boo, all the charges went away. But the fact is, he got convicted in court. Okay. Since he is a crook who got convicted, he now has a grievance. And he wants other people to suffer what he perceives as to be a miscarriage of justice. Okay. And by the way, he is so nutty. He may actually think, because I've seen this in suspects before, they literally don't think they're doing anything wrong. because of a superiority complex, a messiah complex. Oh, I did it for this reason. It's, the ends justify the means nonsense. Okay. So he may think in his head he really didn't commit business fraud, but he did. But he did. Okay. If I say to somebody that my house is 12,000 square feet, not 3890 or whatever it is, okay, and I put that on a mortgage paper and I put that toward an appraisal, I have committed fraud. Straight up, I have committed fraud. I have attempted to defraud the appraiser. I have attempted to defraud the person buying my house. I've attempted to defraud the mortgage company because I'm attempting to present a value. What is the most correlated factor to value of a property? Square footage. Okay. Location, location, location. Sure. But square footage is whether it's, A versus B valuation. 1,200 square foot is obviously going to be worth less, even in a nice neighborhood, than a 4,000 square foot home elsewhere. Okay. But if you suddenly triple your square footage and you put that onto a business document, you have in fact committed fraud. Okay. Letitia James, from my reading of many articles and watching Legal Eagle while I was wrapping up at my desk tonight, there doesn't seem to be any notion of fraud in James' case. Um, she didn't get a benefit from in the manner that they claim she got the benefit in the charging sheet. Well, and that's the problem. The charging sheet is very nebulous, but what they're inferring from it, from a lot of their public statements they say on Fox News and OAN, not in the indictment, is she profited from an illegal renting scheme that violated the terms of her mortgage. Except the terms of her mortgage doesn't say that. What the relationship between her and the occupier of the home was a relative. Okay, this wasn't just a open rental or a Airbnb. This was family helping family. Okay, so the James case, just pure retribution. There's nothing there. The Comey case, their own statements in public undermine the whole case there. Comey is going to win in the first couple of rounds. He is going to win the selective prosecution and prosecution by harassment. He's going to win on those two things in the district court and probably uh, the appellate courts. Where he's going to get into trouble is the Supreme Court, because the Roberts Court now is redefining everything to allow the corruption of dear leader porn star Humper and his street gang. Like, the Roberts Court did this. They literally redefine what bribery is. If a Republican governor and his wife literally state to the person bribing them that they need this money so they can take an action, that's not enough to charge them with bribery anymore. They have to do an official act. That's never been bribery in the history of bribery ever. If I'm at a traffic stop and you offer me $300 to let you go without showing your license and registration, you have offered a bribe. You have committed a felonious act in the simple offer of a bribe. And that's what the statute reads. The Robert Court read what they wanted to out of the bribery statutes and then changed the entire intent and meaning of the bribery statute, which is dangerous. That's wholly dangerous. What the McDonald's did in Virginia, the governor and his wife, was open corruption, the template, the exemplar of a bribery charge. And the Supreme Court refactored what bribery is when it's an ally of the far right court. Okay. Because the Roberts Court is a MAGA court. Okay. They're no longer an impartial judiciary reviewing constitutional matters. They are a political arm of the MAGA machine. And there's evidence on the table now that that's true. So, them using, like, let's go back and talk about how they got the information. One of Trump's screwballs, go back and watch the legal videos. I really recommend you do that. But one of Trump's legal screwballs decided to name himself the charge of Freddie Mac and Freddie May, then immediately turned around and started data harvesting all the data out of those agencies. Sound familiar? Because that's what Doge did, and time and time and time again. They go and raid the data, then go pilfering through the data, go, oh, look at this. We found that somebody not Trump committed a crime. Look at that. It's a retribution roadshow. Okay. So, is this Ed Markley? Is this the guy that dug through the records? I just watched the video an hour. How that's bad. Yeah, I think it was him. Yeah, go back and watch the legal video. But this guy goes on the right wing cable TV news shows and basically says that James knew how Trump committed mortgage fraud because she was an expert because she was doing it herself. And his only evidence of that is his ability to raid government data and go, oh, you took a mortgage. Oh, you didn't live there. Oh, you must have rented. Oh, you can't rent. Why? Because I say so. But not even the writer says that. Okay. Um, so they basically made up a crime through, they basically, what they did, they pilfered through a government data system, went, aha, look, we found a crime. Don't you see there's a crime here? Well, they gave it to a real prosecutor, a career prosecutor, and he went, no way, there's no crime here. You're not even close. You're not even in the ballpark of indicting somebody. So they go, either charge these people, the political enemies of the regime, or we're coming after you. So the guy goes, no, I'm not going to do it. He resigns. He leaves. Okay. That's how Lindsay Halligan got a job. Okay. She signs away, charging Comey and James. And they're doing it in grand juries that aren't even close to the crimes. Okay. So while they throw out a bunch of amendments, they've also now are going to throw out the Seventh Amendment, how the jury system works. You're supposed to be as local as possible unless there is a venue change. Okay. They're literally, because they can't shop the federal judges anymore because the federal judges caught wind of what they were doing. But especially it was like in the Fifth Circuit, they were always shopping these couple of judges they knew were rabble rousing MAGA types, and they would always decide angrily in whatever Trumpian fashion they desired. The federal judges put a complete stop to that last year. Everything is lotto now. So they cannot get the judge they want. So now they're shopping the grand juries they want, the federal grand juries. And that's wholly dangerous. Okay. But also it makes sense if you look at the way Florida and Texas has acted since the first term with Trump. They think Texas and Florida literally think they are America's law enforcement. If Florida has a law or Texas has a law, they should be able to enforce it anywhere in the United States. Kansas had a little bit of that too. They didn't like marijuana being legalized in Colorado, so they pulled over everybody with Colorado or other cannabis legal states and searched every car they could find without out-of-state plates that have legal cannabis, accusing them all of being drug traffickers. A legal business in another state. What if we were to go to some, I don't know, irrigation pipe company and say, no, those aren't irrigation pipes. That's equipment to make meth, and just start arresting everybody from Kansas? That would be pretty stupid, huh? Well, that's exactly what Kansas did. Texas, those fucking flock cameras that are sitting on every intersection of America, they're all over the Bay Area here. I hate them. Okay. They have nothing to do with stopping a burglary or a robbery. They're to give Florida and Texas access to data out of state so they can enforce their fucked up laws in other places. They literally typed into the flock database system, why are you searching? They searched 80,000 cameras or 80,000 videos across like 6,000 cameras. It was this amazing search. Reason for the search: a woman had an abortion. A woman having an abortion isn't illegal or even a problem in most of the states you're searching. But since you now have the technical ability to search, you can search the entire country at once for things that aren't a crime where you're searching. And I think this was another, just the way, like, Dobbs was really decided. Dobbs was not decided at the Supreme Court. It was decided in a conference room over a table over coffee and donuts. Okay. They handed power to a few judges, made them justices, with the implied, not the implied, but the explicit agreement that you will pass laws the way we tell you to pass them under our ideology, not the Constitution. Boom, done. That's where we're at. Okay. Now you got Texas and Florida going, well, if other people can just make up their own laws, why can't we enforce our state statutes in other states? And they've tried. Ken Paxton tried to enforce their abortion laws in 6 other states, including subpoenaing patient data from hospitals. Not in Texas, in Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii. Again, what if we go to Texas and go, well, those aren't cowboys rustling cattle. That's the security force for the cartels. Bring in the Apache helicopters, kill them all. Like you're doing to those Venezuelan fishermen and the Colombian fishermen. You couldn't even get the right fishermen. We're going to get the Venezuelan fentanyl dealers. Fentanyl is not made in Venezuela. It's made in Mexico. Cocaine comes from Peru and Colombia. It is ready for shipment in Venezuela. Not much is grown there. Okay. You want the real stuff? You got to find the Bolivian or the Peruvian snowcap powder. Okay. Everything else is not what you think it is. So yeah, we're imagine us going to Texas and going, okay, that's not this, it's this crime. That's not that, that's another crime. And then taking action on it. Arrest, black sighting them in Louisiana, blowing up their fishing boats. Oh, we blew up a Colombian fishing boat, called them fentanyl trackers. Then the Navy repatriated them to Colombia. They didn't arrest and charge them with drug trafficking. Anybody else concerned about that? I am. How can you sit there and go, we're at war with drug traffickers who are invading the United States of America? We catch one, we blow up their boat, and we go, oops, we're sorry. Let's dust off the boat. Here's a Band-Aid. Oh, here you go. Here's your citizen back. That's not how the drug war works. Well, it also doesn't work as you tell us we're going to go to war with cartels, and then you immediately poured in dozens of cartel members. Then you screw over the informants in 2 countries. Now, why they are doing this, I don't know. I don't know. I can't explain stuck on stupid down at this level. We have a totalitarian regime, an authoritarian system that is now not coming to America. It's frickin' here. A U.S. citizen was grabbed off the street in Massachusetts and transported. Another citizen, a child, was grabbed off the street in Maryland. They ended up in a black site in Louisiana. Didn't even tell the families for a month they were in custody. Oh, a kid, a kid, a kid, grade schooler. Missing persons report out on the kids. Who has them? ICE in custody. No, that one's a gray area because I guess his parents brought him in, but he should be DACA, but I'm not sure. I'm not an immigration lawyer. I'm not sure. But the fact is, they took a minor into custody. and they didn't notify an adult relative for a month, okay, that's just as bad as lighting up the car at the traffic stop and going, no, nothing about that's in the report. Trust me, when you have a minor in custody, okay, you are very quick to get the relatives on the phone. Okay. You do not want to be in that situation where you got a minor in custody that's going to end up at juvenile hall when they shouldn't be there. Okay. Because if you can't find a relative, they got to go to the hall. And especially in the county I worked in, you don't want to send kids to the hall unless they have to go to the hall. Hello. Um, Thank you for joining. Uh, so this whole thing of grabbing a kid off the street because he's brown and he doesn't have his passport. But here's another thing. I read about another guy had his passport in his pocket, attempted to show it to ICE, identified himself as a veteran of Iraq, got thrown into custody for a week. And go back to what I said at the beginning. Who's doing this? People with criminal records that are being hired, people who haven't passed a psych exam, people who haven't passed a polygraph exam if they're doing certain work. Okay? They're just hiring idiots off the street, red hat rubes, proud babies, alt idiots, and they're throwing them out in the goddamn street and calling it law enforcement when it has nothing to do with law enforcement. If you're arresting somebody at the courthouse there for their legal hearing to proceed to the next step in legal immigration and you're arresting them at the courthouse, this has nothing to do with law enforcement. Zero to do with law enforcement. Because nothing, we don't, this is my biggest angst right now, just in general. It doesn't matter if you're talking about trade, law enforcement, what we're doing with the military and the CIA. There is no policy. There is no policy. There are no trade deals. There's no outcomes identified. There are no goals to reach. This whole crap is just a big bundle of animus, grievance, hate, and racism mixed up with a bunch of trust fund brats. I know they're not all trust fund brats. Only about 30. I just did an analysis on this. I'm actually looking it up on my computer right here. Yeah, 36% of the Trump street gang, it comes from family money. So like Kirshner, Gates, Green, Stefanik, Crow, Mellon, the Ulanins, the Murdochs, DeVos, Prince, Tucker Carlson, they all come from family money. Okay. Um, so I think the icing on the shit cake here is you have a person that's the only reason he's president is to stay out of prison. Now he's also realized he can make a lot of money too at the same time. He's already made billions through his fraudulent meme coins. Um, Fraudulent meme coins, which 99% of the transactions in $ Trump are foreign actors, most of that in China, where it would be illegal for those Chinese to trade in those coins. Think about that one for a second. You have a direct funding mechanism directly to the president of the United States himself. It's coming from people that it would be illegal for them to give him money otherwise. But as long as they give it through a meme coin, nobody cares. Nobody is even considering whether or not that's a crime or whether or not that's bribery. Oh, what is one of the companies that's buying a ton of $ Trump meme coin? The shit crypto stuff. What company is doing a lot of that? Binance from China. You know, the guy he just pardoned. Oh, thank you. Thank you for subscribing. Have you on next time. So the company we know is a fraud, Binance, who is a vault disaster in this rug pull world of last man standing. That's all Bitcoin is. There's no intrinsic value. It's just a empty gambling system where they just decide, well, if you didn't get a seat when the music stopped, you're bankrupt. And people are learning that. Like when they detethered several of the pegged coins from the US dollar, they collapsed. Now, but it didn't make any sense. Them being pegged in the first place never made any sense because you sold crypto for years as the anti-government, anti-Fed solution to a fiat currency, the US dollar. Then you turned around and pegged it to what? A fiat currency, the US dollar. Okay. So I think you've got ideologues versus the mixed in because Trump is the epicenter of both. There was a Venn diagram between broken ideologues of the far right and trust fund brats. Boom. Trump is the epicenter of the overlap. Okay. That's where you get a lot of the other people clicking in here that are part of the fund trust fund brat system. Okay. A system, by the way, that did not exist before Reagan. It just did not exist. Okay. Since Reagan, we have eliminated their estate taxes. Somehow taxing a dead person is unconstitutional now. So they decided to tax living, working Americans and senior citizens on fixed incomes instead. They won't tax a dead billionaire now. Think about that. Okay. They haven't paid estate taxes. They've only paid inheritance taxes if their financial planner and their tax attorney was an absolute imbecile. Okay. Inheritance taxes are so easily avoidable. We're doing it with our family. We can transfer our whole home tax free. And I'm not even wealthy. You can do it. Just takes a couple of $1,000 and a legal setup. They don't pay on capital gains and capital gains expansions that they rigged for themselves. Okay. The capital gains rate is not the income tax rate. Okay. So I keep saying, why don't we go to a flat tax, 18, 19%, all said and done? A dollar is a dollar. And if frickin' Elon Musk wants a $53 billion payday, he gets to pay the 19% on the $53 billion. Because right now he's not paying anything. And that's like the Achilles heel of the Democratic/liberal position on taxes, federal taxes in this country. They are convinced we have a progressive tax system when it is the most anti-progressive tax system the world has ever come up with in real life. The reason why you have $37 trillion worth of debt is because we don't collect the revenue. Who do we not collect it from? The wealthiest people and the wealthiest entities in the country. Nor do we call back cost. Like we're about to cut off SNAP from millions of people, 42 million people in what, 3 days? Okay. 1 out of 4 people who collect SNAP dollars work for Walmart in some form. No, I'm sorry. That's the money they take in. 1 out of 4 dollars spent go to Walmart. About 1 in 8 SNAP recipients are Walmart or another big box, low pay job situation. So we're not only giving the tax breaks to the wealthy family that owns all the stocks in Walmart, we're not taxing their capital gains like income, but we're also paying a subsidy to their employees because they don't pay them enough to eat food. And you and I are supposed to fill up the difference. That's impossible. There's no way the working class, especially now, um, uh, the latest study where half of the people could not afford 2 $750 unexpected expenditures or emergency costs in their lives, 2 paychecks in a row, that would send them to the food bank or into bankruptcy. That's half the people in the country. That's 160 million people. And you're going to tap into that to pay for the foreign wars, to pay for the bank bailouts, to pay to subsidize their employees. Totally different topic because I am finding pure entertainment. The best TV show on right now isn't a TV show. It's the news coverage of the New York mayor race, the New York City mayor race. It's hilarious. Now, if I lived in New York City, even though I'm not down with Zorhan, I don't think that way. And I think a lot of his ideas are just populist rhetoric on the left. If I lived in New York City, I'd probably end up voting for Zorhan because what are my other choices? Okay. I can write in somebody I know. Okay, that's like I said that the other day when the first time when Hillary ran against Trump, I couldn't stand either one of them. I wrote in Gary Johnson from New Mexico, the governor. Um, yes, I could write somebody in, but if I'm going to use the four that are running, um, you got Curtis Silla, who is I always thought back in the day was a cool guy. He's turned into a right wing crank. He sounds, I always knew it was kind of gangy, their whole guardian angel vigilante thing. Um, And I'm all about neighborhood watches. That's not my problem. It's the way they approached it, like they were some sort of combat street team, which I always found a little ridiculous, especially when several of their members got their asses kicked, or worse. Um, so you got this gang mentality right winger who has no business running for the New York City mayor race. Then you've got the gang member with a badge, Eric Adams. Okay, corrupt as fuck. I mean, man, that guy should have been booted by the city council a long time ago. I could not morally vote for Adams in any election. And I would be at every city council meeting asking my city council person, why aren't they impeaching the mayor? And why aren't you dealing with the goombas he has inside of the New York Police Department? Because that's a big center of his corruption, the protection detail at New York PD. Okay. Um, then you've got the predator, former Governor Cuomo. Um, are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? This is the same thing when I asked my wife, why did you vote for Clinton again? That was another guy the policies were okay, but I couldn't stand the man. I always thought Bill Clinton was a freaking degenerate. Okay. Well, turns out Trump's a criminal degenerate, maybe one of the worst kind of degenerates if we ever get the Epstein files released. And Cuomo is no better than Clinton or any of the other pervs that get in office. Okay. He openly, blatantly sexually harassed more than a dozen women. I'm going to vote for you to be mayor. You've lost all credibility, asshole. Fuck off. Like, Cuomo's the worst thing about the election. The fact that Cuomo's got the gall to go back in there. I can see Adams doing it. Okay. In the whole Mayor Daley of Chicago way. But like Cuomo being in the race. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, any man with self-respect would go, nope. I don't want you anywhere near my family, or especially my daughter. You creep. And then you got Zorhan, who is just a left populist. Okay. And here's the problem with left populism. I'm sorry, don't kill the messenger here if you happen to be on the left side of equation at any degree. But every single time in history when left-wing populism goes against right-wing populism, it loses. Only rare outliers are different. And the rare outliers kind of suck. Venezuela. Yeah, that's a left-wing dictatorship. Um, I get what Zorhan is saying about affordability. Affordability isn't a New York City problem. It's an America problem. It's a freaking Alabama problem. It's an Indiana problem. Okay. Um, so I get like the base cost of living, quality of life stuff, and that's what politicians, especially mayors, love to talk about it. I get it. I get it. But yeah, I wrote a whole essay on it. Please go back and read that. Your commie grocery store from East Germany doesn't solve a single freaking problem, including the problem of poor people in the boroughs of New York City. Okay. The grocery market space is completely consolidated to a couple of big players. The reason why you have food costs is not only is the grocery retail space consolidated, the ag space underneath it is consolidated. The logistics space underneath it is consolidated. Oftentimes to just over a duopoly, depending on the region. I've explained this before. A duopoly is actually worse than a monopoly. A duopoly gets you the impression that competition is occurring, when often it's less competitive than when you would have a monopoly. That's a big problem with our health insurance. There's no real competition, especially when they're sitting in Starbucks exchanging numbers on individual families and policies. They got caught doing that. Okay. So, like, where do we go? Where do we go from here? Because I'm watching the New York space as sort of like a litmus test for the country at large, in society at large. Um, Cuomo's, and then let's break down the political persona categories. You got Silva, just an alt right crank. Then you got Eric Adams. He's the law and order black conservative who needs to be more conservative than the white conservatives because he has to fit in. Okay, so every answer is a more right leaning answer to whatever the problem is. Okay. Then you got Cuomo, who's just an up and up corporatist. He's a corporate socialist. If it's about keeping money in the wealthy's hands, he's all for it. Okay. Then you have a left wing populist. Okay. Now, the left wing populist is going to probably win New York City by the polling. Okay. Now, I don't think that's the disaster. Like the felon George Santos, the congressman who was a crime wave, one man crime wave. I'm leaving New York City if Zerhan gets elected mayor. Well, then the crime rate in New York City is going to go down. One less felon. You're the last guy to be talking about crime and safety. What the hell? But here's the problem that Zorhan's got now. You've got the same problem everybody else has once you get in office. You got to govern. Okay? Can you govern by platitudes? No. Can you govern by non-solutions? No. Can you govern while pissing off completely whoever places themselves on your other side? Because everything's got to be a polarity in our system. I can't just disagree a little bit with Zorhan. I got a little about that about my essay. I'm like, I didn't say about anything about him personally. I didn't say anything about his wife. I didn't say anything about his religion. I didn't say anything about his family. I didn't see any way about the way he made his money. I just talked about his big talking point that week of commie grocery stores. Commie grocery stores owned by the city of New York that does not solve the corporate socialism problem that has occurred in the grocery retail market space. That's all I said. Okay. Just because somebody is right, I don't need to be far left and vice versa. Just because you're looking at a magnet and going, oh, I'm holding the north. Oh, I must now hold the south. North, south, north, south, north, south. Blah, blah, blah. No, there's no need for that crap. Okay. But Zorhan's big problem now is he's talked a big game. Okay. And a lot of the things he's talked big about, he has absolutely no control over as the mayor of New York. None. Zero. Okay. Um, unless he can get cooperation from the New York State Attorney General to start going after the consolidated interests in the grocery space, you're not going to see food prices go down. Okay. The mayor of New York City cannot control what the fucked-hearted dementia patient gang member president does when he wakes up in the morning in a bad mood. You know, if he decides that whatever, the mania, who knows what tomorrow morning's going to bring. Okay. 10% more on Canada because they didn't take down the ad fast enough. First of all, the ad wasn't from Canada, idiot. It was from the province of Ontario. You don't even understand the way Canadian government works. Okay. The federal government actually doesn't have a lot of power like our federal government has. The main power is with the provinces, not with the federal government in Ottawa. Okay. Little Canadian civics lesson for y'all. So we can't control whatever mania, dementia, high blood pressure, swollen ankles, cankles, wakes up with any spouts out something stupid. Zorhan has no control of that whatsoever. Okay. Zorhan cannot override state statute, nor can he override the State House of New York. What he can do is affect things locally. And that's going to be a tough haul. Okay. Now, I think there's places where he could get some easy wins. Going back to ICE for a moment, their whole shit on Canal Street in New York City. Almost everybody that lives down there is an immigrant. So you could just walk to the street and just grab any non-white person and claim it's an arrest to protect America. It doesn't matter. You're just grabbing people off the street for at random. You may get a criminal. By large number theory, you could get a criminal if you arrest enough people, but that's not why you're out there doing it. You're not out there to stop crime. You're out there to suppress minority neighborhoods. Now, let me ask you this, especially now the conservatives who are so concerned about civil rights and the War Powers Act, and the liberals who are melting down appropriately, but melting down over ICE. Where the hell were you when I ran for mayor 15 years ago trying to stop the local police tanks? Okay. I'm not a liberal. Okay. I stuck my neck out there and actually got threatened over my well-informed opinions that a local police department should not be a military unit, because very, very soon, the only thing that will matter is that damn tank. And that's exactly what happened. Now, ICE is driving around Canal Street, not with a tank, not with one armored Bearcat. Okay. And the reason I'm using the word tank, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic. Civilians don't know the frickin' difference, people. Okay. When I'm on next door and they say, what is the tank doing down on XYZ Street? And why is the military here? This immigrant who just got here, who lives in the poor section of our town, literally thinks it's the military, because in their home country, it is the military. And now they're now scared shitless. That's the reason the tank is on the street, because college kids may have an opinion. God forbid a black college student has an opinion. God forbid in this county, when they got the tanks, 3 young black men walked the same direction on Broadway. That's a deployment of 7 police departments, a police helicopter, 3 tanks, and 5 SWAT teams. I'm not kidding. Hell, they sent a police tank out on a traffic warrant, failure to pay, right here in my own town. We need tanks now and carbines to arrest somebody who didn't show up for a running the red light ticket? Are you fucking kidding me? No, seriously, where was everybody? This did not start with Trump. This did not start with ICE. This is something that's been bugging me for weeks now. This is a long time coming. Okay? Is not only did you have military gear dumped onto the street to be used against American civilians, not terrorists. One of the first uses nationwide of the military gear was a disaster down in Florida, where a homeowners association reported to the local police an illegal garden. So what did the local police department do? They got all their gear multiple armored Humvees, a Bearcat, level 4 body armor, not just AR-15s, but battlefield assault rifles, like the M14 KSs. And they raided this couple's yard because they were growing okra, not against city ordinance, against homeowner policy. Yeah, that happened. Okra, not cannabis. Okra. They sent tanks and military gear against hippies growing okra. But now you're upset about ICE showing up on Canal Street with 3 armored cars and 40 millimeter grenade launchers, which they're now shooting at people's heads? Pepper ball guns where they're shooting people in the head, including preachers? You're now concerned about this more than 15, 18, 20 years later? Now you're concerned about this? I was the guy way back when saying, don't allow them to get the damn tank. Give them the AR-15s because you're dumb enough to sell those guns to the criminals. Okay, should be an even firefight. Okay, then put the ballistic panels into the doors of the cars, of the regular patrol cars. We ran bulletproof cars in West Germany, both security covered cars, the Ford LTDs, and then the big Mercedes armored sedans for the generals and the VIPs. Okay, we had cars that could take 100 rounds of AK-47 and keep driving like there was nothing happened. There was no reason to deploy the freaking tanks on the streets, other than you were really worried that a college kid had a political opinion. You were seriously worried one of those college kids were black. That's what happened. But now ICE, everybody's at Twitter. Now the governments have gone too far. Really? Really? The government's gone too far now? I've been calling for the end of the drug war since the early 2000s, for at least 20 years now. Now we're murdering fishermen of 2 different countries, claiming they're wartime suspects. Then again, repatriating the wounded back to their country. Okay. You can't walk through an airport or drive down certain highways in this country without having the money taken out of your pocket by a federal law enforcement agent, and your money being taken away from it because you, the American citizen, is automatically a drug dealer if you have cash on you. Automatically. And they will sue your money. The filing in court actually reads $25,000 versus the United States government. Why? Why is your name not on there, even though they took that $25,000 out of your pocket? That would give you standing. They don't want that. So I told you the drug war. You said you pay attention to the law enforcement against the prohibition. Okay. I told you to start looking at the critics, reading the critics' papers about how bad the drug war is going and how it's destroying law enforcement from within. It's creating corruption from within. Nothing. Then 9/11 happened. Boom. Now we got tanks on the street. Boom. We waited at least a decade and a half before anybody wakes up and realizes, forget the army. Between the local, the sheriff, the state police, and the federal agencies, they have an entire armored army ready to go and destroy any American's life at a moment's notice. And only now you're upset because it applies to poor minorities. It always has. How many times have you read about a police tank showing up in Manhattan or Atherton or some wealthy enclave in Texas, minus, some spree shooter or something? You know, the tanks get deployed for everything and everything. Like when they hit Canal Street last week in New York City, ICE and the federal agents, did they have any information whatsoever that they were up against a coordinated armed force that would require responses from multiple armored vehicles? I doubt it. I doubt it. But it isn't like he didn't know about this. This has been going on for at least a decade and a half. So why are you concerned only now? And here's another concern. One of the big reasons we have a $37 trillion deficit is foreign wars and a bloated defense budget. Now, I'm super pro, even though I have serious problems with our foreign policy. You need a professional standing army. If not, you're going to get your ass kicked. Okay. Um, ask many civilizations who learned that lesson the hard way. Okay. Having a standing professional military force, pilots who can fly and land on an aircraft carrier, that sort of stuff, which takes constant practice, by the way. That is not to say we should go fight another Iraq or a Venezuela and lose another war at trillions of dollars in cost. Okay. But what upsets me about the military was that 82nd Airborne photo op Trump arranged with only the white senior NCOs. Okay. And he kept talking about evading America, and the 82nd Airborne NCOs kept on cheering. Well, 82nd Airborne NCOs, who probably make a good amount of money being an E6, E7, E8, E9, have family benefits, family housing. How about if we cut the military budget in half? Because if the only thing you have to do with your skills and your training and your time is to attack Americans or sit there and bark like a seal because a gang member leader, street gang leader is telling you we need to military invade a society where crime is plummeting. He thinks a military force can get rid of drugs. We've been trying that since the fucking 80s. I know, I was there. The military has been involved down in Colombia, blowing shit up since the 80s. Cocaine still exists. Fentanyl is now worse. Now, everything they've ever targeted was replaced with something worse. They targeted Mexican brown. Yeah, you had a few overdoses back in the day, but it's lightweight shit. Okay, it isn't like the chemical synthetics now or like fentanyl now. No, no. Okay, you replaced Mexican brown heroin with opioid pills. Mexican brown was killing a few hundred people a year. Opioid pills killed 100,000 a year. Great win, huh? You said meth was the end of the country. Instead of getting these people psychiatric and medical care and family counseling and wherever they need to get over their problems and their addictions and their life fuck upness, no. What did you do? You ran a drug war that introduced fentanyl as the next product in the system. Then you started fighting a war on fentanyl in a country that doesn't produce fentanyl. So if all we have is false targets, Colombian fishermen, American citizens that haven't been doing anything wrong, legal residents who are allowed to be, people on medical visit grants are being arrested. Okay, there's no way I'm doing that. I would literally turn around and tell my ship supervisor or my platoon commander, I am not playing hands on that person. You want to arrest him? You got a fucking badge. You do it yourself. You want to have me up on internal affairs charges for failing to follow an order? I'm all for it. Charge away, sir. I am not putting my hands on somebody who did not commit a crime who's here on a medical visit visa. No. No, no, no. Hell no. Any political prisoner who's here on asylum that is risk of harm or death by returning to their country, am I going to be involved in arresting and deporting them? No. The Nicaraguan kids in my time, we all knew why they were here. We all knew their paperwork was probably not all 100% in order. Are we sending them back to Nicaragua? No. They don't cause any problems here. They work in the kitchens down at the wharf. They work in some of the the menial jobs around town. And they go get a dinner. They go back to their apartment where they sleep 3 or 4 up to a bedroom. They get some rest. They get up in the morning and do the same thing. We never had any problems in that community. So am I going to sit there and go, oh yeah, you go ahead and arrest these people and deport them? No. You send these kids back, they're going to get shot in the head. It's not moral to arrest them. Now, if they committed a felony, that's another story, but that's not what we're talking about here. So few of the people they're arresting have a criminal record or a criminal warrant out for their arrest. So if like what are we going to do when we have, and I'm not saying like this is upper echelon desires of the military, but I still don't like the whole visuals of that photo op with them cheering. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and invade Boston. Boston? Are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck is going on in Boston that it needs to be invaded? Okay, this is either mental illness or grievance and stupidity that he's hung on to for so long, it's turning into a mental illness. Okay, but seriously, I really, till this moment, defund the police was the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. Because you're really going to send the Murder She Wrote club to the murder scene, and they're going to do the crime scene, the fingerprints, the photography, and the autopsy. Come on, let's be a little real about this. Now, I said again, 10, 20 years ago, stop arresting young men, especially young black men, over dime bags. This is fucking stupid. All it does is clog up the courts, overload the jails, and we're not solving a single fucking societal problem. Okay. And we actually made it worse because instead of testing the rape kits, not just in my county, but all over the country, they tested the dime bags instead. And the rape kits sat on the shelf until they rotted and were of no use. So we literally stopped investigating crime so we could put young minority men in county jail and in state prison on probation and parole violations because of dime bags. We're not talking kilos here. We're talking dime bags, which goes back to my civic duty thing about getting on juries. Yeah. If you're a professional and you've got a good CV or good resume, apply for a grand jury, either county or state where you live. When you get that jury notice for the Patet jury, the criminal trial jury, go to the jury call. Get on those juries. Because the juries, again, I talked about this last time, I want to reiterate while I'm on the subject, is juries are starting to wake up and realizing jury nullification is a real freaking thing. Grand juries are refusing to indict on felonies. The Subway sandwich guy. There's no way that's a felony. Is it unlawful touching a misdemeanor? Yeah. By the video, I don't know, a year's probation, 100 hours of community service, and a court fine covering the costs, maybe $500. It's not a felony. Shit, I got punched in the mouth and punched in the eye a lot harder than that, and it wasn't even a felony. Hell, a Navy SEAL shoved my buddy Jeff's contact up underneath his eye and had to go get it surgically removed at the hospital. The DA, because he was a SEAL, they wouldn't charge felony charges on him because they didn't want him to lose his job. And I said it was okay because he kind of got his ass kicked. He got cross-checked in the ribs. He didn't see me coming, and then he got pig piled pretty bad for hitting Jeff. So, um, this, we're in such a crazy space. Like that's why I'm having so much trouble writing right now. Is I've got like 19 drafts started, but every time I get down this rabbit hole of a thing, it's like everything we look at, it's all there's a whole flow diagram of fucked upness you got to cover, and it's like, what can I communicate that tells a complete story? That's why I like, my American Dream was assassinated in 1978 because it told the story of several decades. Um, right now we're playing like this super weird catch up because one day he's telling the 82nd Airborne to invade Boston. The next day he's threatening to invade San Francisco. The second they get here, they start throwing fucking flashbangs at people. Okay. 20 hours later, it's all called off. Okay. It's complete mania. And again, there's no policy. There's no outcomes identified. There's no goals to achieve. They don't even care. Keep Trump out of prison. keep lining their pockets, and now they have open permission. Because if you noticed, Tom Holland, who took $50,000 on tape in a fast casual bag, retail bag, is not even looking at a grand jury. He's still in charge. Any other administration, including like Nixon, he'd have been out on his ass within a couple of days. Holland, they're treating Holland like he couldn't have possibly done anything wrong. Why? Trump doesn't like the FBI. He only likes Department of Homeland Security. He really likes ICE because his homie Holland and his queen bitch Noam and DHS, they're willing to do the dirty work. They're literally willing not just to get their hands dirty, they're willing to get blood on their hands. So it's this super cavalcade that's going on right now. And this is the whole plan. This is another thing. Like, you're so pissed about the tanks now, but you weren't pissed about them 18 years ago. You're pissed now that all this stuff's happening, but they wrote it down for you in Project 2025. I wrote that essay in August before the election. Over a year before the election, I wrote the essay saying, this is their game plan. They're not joking. Every single thing they've done is written down in Project 2025. At least the basics of it. So where do we go here? What do we do? How do we, maybe this is the next discussion I have here, thinking aloud on video, is like, we have a whole list of things to do. And they all involve controlling the office of the president, getting Congress to function again because they're non-functional, and de-corrupting the Supreme Court and the federal court system. There's so much to do, but we can't do anything until Congress wakes up. And the midterms are a long way away. Now, what I do think is the whole theater show, which is MAGA, people have already looked behind the curtain. Even the red hat rubes are waking up. Now, the diehards will be diehards. Okay. It's like the press secretary for Nixon flying all the way back to Santa Monica with him after he resigned his presidency. He's going to be a sycophant to the very end. Now, what's different then than today, there were only like a couple, like a handful of Congress people who stuck with Nixon after he resigned. All those people were voted out of the office the very next turn. Okay. That's not happening now. Why? Because they didn't have the information cycle, the information tsunami available to them through social media, through AM radio, through Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, and they couldn't pollute the mind 24/7. Now they can. Now you, like Nixon, I really do doubt if the FBI came out and said, we've got it on tape, him taking $50,000. There's no freaking way Holland survives a week under Nixon or Reagan. He doesn't last 20 minutes under Daddy Bush. But even under the other questionable regimes, this would not have gone on. They've known about this for a year now. And they just treat it like, what crime? We're not capable of committing crimes. Letitia James committed a crime, not us. Antifa committed a crime. And by the way, Antifa being declared a criminal organization, there's a pattern. The drug war, the war on terror, declaring Antifa a terrorist organization. It's all one compendium. All you had to do was elect an idiot who was willing to just throw out all decorum, reasonableness, common sense, live their life by grievance, partisanship, hatred, all for the purpose of a criminal profiteering scheme. Oh, who am I describing? Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi. Idi Amin, the Ceausescus in Romania, the Marcoses in the Philippines, Maduro, Venezuela, the current dickhead in El Salvador. All it took was somebody to come in, just go, I don't care about the norms. Get out of here. This is exactly what we're seeing. But the wheels are coming off the cart. People are waking up. The problem is the volume isn't going down because they're just replacing the real voices with synthetic voices. You know, and yes, they took out a couple of bot farms for social media in the last couple of weeks. Huge one in Germany they took down. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay. When they say, oh, we took down the spam bot cell phone farm, read that like you read, oh, we got the cocaine shipment at the port. No, you got one cocaine shipment of the port of the 1,000 of cocaine shipments that came through this week. That's the reality. Okay, so now they're just pumping the information, trying to hang on to this microcosm. Because another compendium is Trump's following is actually just a reboot. Now, Trump hasn't thought up a single original thing his entire life, including what his persona, his political persona was going to be. All Trumpianism is a radicalized version of the moral majority of the 80s. Jerry Falwell and crew. The immoral minority, as the rest of us called them. Okay. They're just a bunch of pious twats who are wealthy, usually by scheming or a tax avoidance or a tax avoidance. And they literally think they rule the world because they exist. Okay. Now, all you've done is replace Jerry Falwell Jr. with Christian priestesses, Rudy Giuliani, a bunch of trust fund brats who are billionaires, and a known felon and a suspected rapist and an even more suspected child molester. Child rapist. Let's be honest about it. Okay. A minor cannot consent. I'm a former sexual crimes investigator. A minor cannot consent. Period. End of story. Okay. But now that we have a groomer list, what is the last thing they want to do? Release the groomer list. Groomer, groomer, groomer. How many tens of thousands of times did you hear that? Now they don't want to release the groomers list. Same way the Catholic Church didn't want to release their list. Same one the other sects who got caught don't want to release that list. So where do we go? How do we curtail? I know like the structural things we need to do for taxation, but I got to think about the next video. I got a list started in Notepad here on my laptop. Um, what do we need to control the office of the presidency and control decorum and action in Congress? Because I think that's the two biggest problems we have right now. Congress is the whole heart of the problem. If Congress was functioning, they would have already impeached Justice Roberts. If Congress was functioning, they would have not just impeached, but they would already be convicted and thrown out of office. Dear leader in his first term, and he would never have been up in the polls to run a second term. He would never had that political wherewithal and availability to him. So where do we go from here? How do we survive to the midterms? That's the calculus that we've all got to sit down and we got to figure out. Because I don't think the blame shifting is going to work that much longer. You can't just blame woke and Antifa for every problem underneath the sun. That's nonsensical. Okay. Especially when a guy shows up at a Democratic politician's house in the upper Midwest wearing a mask and he starts executing people. Then you go, oh, look what woke did. No, 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 no. So I think the gaslighting is coming to an end. except for the extremely devout. It's like Reverend Jim Jones. Not everybody in the cult went to Guyana. That's what I'm saying. But through the mania, how do we get to the midterms without one going crazy ourselves? And some days it's hard. Like it's really saddening and disappointing to read the news as of late. But once we get to a point, and it could happen before the midterms, like you could have a Republican, become ineligible for office for one reason or another, or pass away or whatever, and they end up having a special election. And every special election in 2025, MAGA has lost every single one. Okay, so we have a special election that suddenly tilts the balance in the House. Okay, but we're still not there. That's still an unknown time period. That's the problem. Because I think the midterms is going to be completely ugly for the Republicans, even ones that aren't as zany as the core MAGAs are. I think the brand is so damaged. Um, you can't say that the Republicans are a conservative party anymore. They're not. They're a holistically nationalist, far right Christian nationalist regime. They're not even interested in competing for office anymore. They're trying to say they are the government. And those words and those effects of those words have come out of dear leader's mouth directly. You have to go through the White House. I was just talking about the New York City mayor's race. They have to go through the White House. Not a city in this country has to go through the White House to elect a mayor. What the hell are you talking about? Or when he told the Washington state governor, you have to, we are the law. No, you're not. That's actually not what you are. So I think all of that is wearing thin. You're going to see breaks, especially when things start getting tough. Like when the loans are due in Nebraska, the farming season loans, because they didn't get their loan guarantees. The farmers got screwed on their loans by directly by Trump. That was his decision. Screw the farmers. When their notes come due, because they all had to go to the bank and get 10% notes, and they have to start paying them after a crappy season where they couldn't sell any soy gum or soybeans, you're going to see some Trump hate come out in spades because people are going to start seeing the hard consequence of the ill thought policy or the ill thought grievance. There's no policy here. Yeah. Destroying both the agriculture market and the beef market simultaneously because you have a magical system that you think you can achieve tomorrow morning. That's not a policy. That's more of a crackhead pipe dream. Now, where one thing, and I'll finish this up now on this little tidbit is one of the many things that the red hat rubes are suddenly going bink, and a lot of the lobbyists who happen to be on the traditional conservative side or the traditional right side that's moved away MAGA because that's where the political pendulum is. The NRA just filed to support ownership of firearms in the transgender community. Uh, for the first time in their life, the NRA is really going to enforce their slippery slope doctrine that if you take a gun away from anybody, you can take it away from everybody. They're going to go to court to defend transgenders because the Trump administration and RFK, I think he's the co-conspirator on this one, are going to have a executive order or some sort of other dictum, not a policy, not a law, not a study, that's just going to label transgender people as mentally ill and therefore ban them from all firearm ownership. The NRA is not buying it. The SRA, if you don't know what that is, that's the far left wing version of the gun fetishists. Those are the Socialist Rifle Association. They're not happy either. After the Pulse nightclub, one of the biggest demographics to start buying guns were queer folks in Florida. So queer folks in Florida aren't happy because you just can't label a group. Because if they can label transgender and mentally ill with no medical evidence and no medical research, they can just label everybody who's a transgender or a cross-dresser or transvestite, however you identify yourself, whatever area of queer folk they're mad at this moment. If you can just label somebody mentally ill, rubber stamp, boom, done, they're mentally ill, there's nothing you can say about it. They can then literally just apply that label to anybody else. So it's funny that the traditional stalwart of Republican protectionism, the NRA, is now going to go to court to say, no, you're absolutely wrong. If they're a U.S. citizen, they have a right to buy and own and operate a firearm as long as they're not otherwise legally prohibited. And it's a sound, salient argument. And the NRA going to the carpet for the transgender community, I think it's like super cool American style. Yeah, it's like the black NAACP lawyer back in the '80s that would defend the Klan guys for free because they're getting arrested over shit they said, and he's like, "Hey, I disagree with everything that comes out of these idiots' mouths, but it's not illegal to say stupid shit. It's only illegal to take actions on the stupid shit." So he would defend them. I think that's total Americana. I think that's great. I don't see any reason to ban firearms from people unless we give them a legitimate reason. And there's a whole bunch of them on the books. There's a bunch of legitimate reasons to take guns away from. Hey, we've had takeaway laws in California for shit long as I've been in California. Um, we can even take guns out of the house during a domestic disturbance. Okay, which is great because it lowers the follow up calls and the homicide rates that occur after the first call. Um, yeah, I'm all for preserving rights, including all the rights, all the constitutional amendments. I'm preserving all those rights. Um, but there are limits to all those rights, and there are limits to the Second Amendment. Like, if I was making the decision, which I know I can't do, I'm not a dictator. I don't want to be. I don't think anybody should be. But if you made it my decision, I would say that all AR style rifles require a federal 3 license, which means background checks, insurance, inspections, yada yada yada. And that also can be done through the private clubs, like because they do that in other countries like Sweden. The private clubs handle most of it, and the private clubs will take away your or recommend that you have your license taken away if you can't handle your firearms properly. So I'm all for gun ownership. I just all for responsible gun ownership, and I don't want mentally ill people, actual and mentally ill people, just grabbing a category of people and going, they're mentally ill. They don't get a gun. This is the exact disarming message the NRA has used since I was a teenager. They just want to disarm the populace like they did in the Soviet Union. Now they're back at that, but they're doing it for the transgender community as a response to Trump and Bondi and RFK wanting to demonize a group. It's the only way I can put it. You just want to demonize a group. If Bubba gets his hardware and there's no exception to Bubba owning his hardware, then I think you have almost no legal case to sit there and go, this category of American citizens, because why couldn't they just say next? Gay, not transgender, but gay. Why couldn't they say Jew or black or Irish or Turk or woman? So I think that's interesting. So the reason I did that whole tangent was the normal ally linkage. Think about it as a workflow diagram where objects are connected to other objects because they have prominence in between the two objects. The NRA is completely interlinked with the Republican Party. Not in even the NRA is going to back up Trump on some of his bullshit. And the other place where Trump is losing and where more evidence the cart is losing its wheels is the Friends of the Court brief on the in-bank hearing on the Portland deployment. When 22 governors and another, what was it, dozen AGs all sign on the same filing to the court as a Friends of the Court brief, saying everything we're talking about here in Trump's wishes just to overrule governors is completely bullshit. And that includes all the Republican governors on the signature list. There's an indication that the wheels are, in fact, coming off the Nazi-fied cart. Okay. So I'm going to think about what the containment process is going on. I'm going to work on my list here. I think it's up to like 21 things now. Like things we need to do, like term limits for Congress and Senate, obviously. Shit. Chuck Grassley's going to run again. He's going to be 97 when he gets out of office. Get the fuck out of here. Jesus Christ. Give somebody else a try. So let me think more about this. Next video, a couple of days, I'll get back online. We'll talk about kind of the item list we want to do, and then you guys can give me some feedback. Like, where's your priorities? What is the criticalities that we have to achieve to be successful in the post-Trumpian process? Because there has to be one. Because eventually he's going to go away. Vance can't carry the water, and I think the entire movement dies with Dear Leader, or at least let's hope so. By peaceful means. I'm hoping for a stroke at the lectern right in the middle of the press briefing. But we are going to have to get post-Trump. How do we get there? So let's think about that, and I'll talk about that next time. Okay? And until next time, think about it.